on the right side with Shadoll, Burning Abyss, or in short, Shabby.
I think that name is probably going to stick now.
It is going to stick. I'm going to make it stick.
Alright, the hands are loading in. I'm not sure who's going first, but we're seeing a handshake.
So we got the hand of Paolo already. So once again, don't get confused by this. We got a Curry Bandit, which is really, really good in his deck.
Yeah, he triggers everything.
Yes.
If Curry Bandit hits at any monsters, and it's a large 28 monster count deck.
But apparently Federico was going first, so let's just check what he had in hand.
Artifact Sanctum, 2 Wiretaps, Mystical Space Typhoon, and a Shadoll Falco.
Yeah, and now all of these cards, but the Falco, have been set on the table. But it's Paolo's turn, and he kicks things off with the bearded man, the mathematician, and he's doing some calculations, it seems, and comes up with the perfect solution to that formula, sending, what do you think, to the graveyard?
Actually,
it's impossible to tell, right?
Yeah, it's difficult to see which way he wants to take his strategy. But the really interesting thing there is he chose to not use Curry Bandit, which is most effective on your first turn, actually outplaying the Artifact Sanctum, which he's probably unaware of.
Right. What other cards could answer Curry Bandit? Maybe a breakthrough skill, right?
Well, there's no breakthrough skill in sight. There's 2 wiretaps, which are actually of no use to Federico right now because there's no trap cards.
Right. And speaking of traps, we got quite the interesting deck list once again. Federico went, of course, I'm saying of course, although we had a player earlier that didn't play a single copy of it, 3 copies of Sinister Shadow Games. He's also playing Solemn Warning, a compulsory evacuation device, 3 copies Artifact Sanctum, so he's not just playing Shadolls, he's also playing artifacts. And Vanity's Emptiness, 2 copies of Breakthrough Skills, and 2 copies of Wiretap, as you mentioned before.
And you saw how quickly Mathematician was placed in the graveyard, which signals to me that Apollo, sorry, I don't know why I keep getting these names wrong. I'm really sorry, guys, you at home, or if you watch this back. Immediately placing it in the graveyard, he's probably very aware of making sure he didn't play the Curry Bandit straight into the Artifact Morale Attack, which would have been absolutely crippling at the start of the game.
Not to say devastating.
Okay, and Mystical Space Typhoon in the end phase used against Book of Moon, which would have outplayed both the Wiretaps by being a spell and not a trap card. Perhaps one of the reasons that it's being so successful, and it's very good against Burning Abyss monsters as well. So
right, let's have a look at what Paolo has in his hand, because he's got all the options.
Yeah, we've got a Shadoll Fusion, Sir the Malbranch of the Burning Abyss, Sir Malbranch of the Burning Abyss, there's no the in there, Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, Curry Bandit, and Shadoll Beast. And here he flips up a Shadoll Falcon, and he targets Squamata, which Shadoll, and sets that on the field, which I can bring that card up for you guys as soon as it loads in.
Just, yeah, give it a second to load. And then Paolo, meanwhile, thinks about his follow-up play.
Has a flip effect to destroy a monster on the field.
That's the interesting thing. Like, I've seen some of these strategies before where you go with a lot of monsters, and very often players simply decided to cut the trap and spell cards to make sure that they end up with 40 cards. Paolo instead just said, no, I'm just going to combine both engines and just throw it all together in one big deck.
Yeah, and here now we've seen
Shadoll Fusion.
Yeah, Shadoll Fusion being played. It's not a free fusion, but at the same time it's sending Shadoll Beast and Squamata to the graveyard, getting second activation of Squamata, and also allowing Apollo to draw a card.
Right. So this, I think, one of the main elements that we're working in Paolo's favor this weekend is that the X factor. The opponent, even when he sees what he's playing, he's got no idea what's coming next.
Yeah, you have no idea which direction that the deck is going to take. As lots of cards are being sent from the deck to the graveyard, and all of them can trigger and cause completely different game states at any stage. There's, depending on, with the things like Curry Bandit, you're randomizing your early game because you have no idea how it's going to resolve. So making a solid plan before you play the Curry Bandit is making wise estimations on what you could draw, but you're not going to have a solid plan on how your game's going to play out until those types of effects have resolved.
So my feeling is this deck really isn't for everybody. I mean,
Well, no. If you're looking, I mean, the deck is turning out to be surprisingly consistent. Um,
which reminds us of the Mermaid builds with 50-something cards, which
yeah,
also turned out to be a lot more consistent than everybody would have expected them to be. So once again, we're going for a Synchro Summon, which is something we don't see every day.
oh, this is Arcanite Magician, and there is going to be no response against this Arcanite Magician, and it could very comfortably go after two cards here.
So Paolo triggering the effect. Federico trying to telegraph that he's about to have a response, although he isn't. And he lost his wiretap.
Yeah, you see how he randomized it to give his even just take away a bit of information from his opponent, and perhaps telegraph that he's going to go for a monster with the second activation. Then he immediately just targets the other.
But as you can see, Paolo, like a small smile on his face. He's like, yeah, that doesn't work. And now he's stepping down on the gas pedal with a tour guide, which is once again giving him all the options, going for the Burning Abyss. In this case, he doesn't really have any Shadoll plays, but he doesn't need to.
Yeah, well, if you take a look at his hand, he has a Shadoll Fusion, a Shadoll Falco, so he still has a Blackluster Soldier and a Curry Bandit, and now he's got Dante in play.
So with Query Bandit, it's almost 100% certain that this Blackluster Soldier will go live. If Query Bandit resolves, I think he already has a light in the Dark Monster in his graveyard, right?
Taking a look. No, I think he needs to the Arcanite Magician. If I just pull that card up for you, that's a light monster there, but I don't believe there's any other light monsters in the graveyard for Blackluster Soldier, and there's every chance that Paolo would want to hold that back.
So it's interesting to see that Paolo has made so many plays, but he's still holding on to so many cards, because both in Burning Abyss and especially in Shadoll, I have the feeling that sometimes when you commit to a lot of plays, you run out of cards in your hand. Eventually that's bound to happen. But in his case, it never seems to happen, to be honest.
It's just lots of self-replacing monsters, or monsters that turn what would be a cost into an advantage, and he's just allowing him to hold on to so many plays that leaves all his options open. If you compare it to the opponent side of the field, where we've got Shadoll Falco, an Artifact Moraltac, which will only activate if it's triggered by his opponent at this stage, and a Shadoll Hedgehog, which has just been flipped up for Shadoll Fusion.
Right. So how vulnerable is Paolo in this stage? I mean, he's got two monsters, both special summoned from the extra deck. So Shadoll Fusion is gonna play a major part right here.
Yeah, it's a free fusion, and there's going to be no response against that free fusion.
Will we see, like, is there a chance that Federico can wrap things up? What's his hand again?
He's got a Shadoll Falco and Artifact Moraltac.
So that's not enough to...
No, he's still got to deal with both of these monsters, even with the free fusion, because he has no spells or traps. The Shadoll Dragon is not going to be able to take options away from him, so which is going to encourage him, Federico, to send the Shadoll Beast to the graveyard to draw a card instead, expanding the arsenal of Federico as opposed to taking things away from Paolo.
Once again, the Winged Angel, the Shadoll Construct, or El Shadoll Construct, I should say, hitting play. One of the cards that has, I think that's the card we've most seen that got special summoned from the extra deck.
Absolute excellent fusion monster.
Also, the Arcanite Magician, it definitely seemed like the right play, but wouldn't a Black Rose
It could
Dragon...
have been really risky. If he knew his opponent was playing Artifact Moraltax, he could have very easily have triggered one, but perhaps that was his intent, because he could have then followed up with Blackluster Soldier,
right?
Because his light monster would have gone to the graveyard.
So there are reasons to favor this play over Black Rose Dragon, which could have just netted him more of an advantage.
Well, he could have swept the field with Black Rose Dragon, but then if he hits the Artifact Moraltac, his opponent gets a free monster, and then
he doesn't have with nothing. Really. Yeah.
This way, even if he hits the Moraltac, he gains a light monster and can follow up Blackluster Soldier's 2 attacks.
So it seems like the right call, doesn't it?
It seemed like, even though he was risking his opponent's some backlash from that, and then he would have taken away some of the impact his opponent could have made with his other cards.
Right. So now it's Federico's turn to pull ahead, or at least try to pull ahead, taking out one of Paolo's monsters, but Paolo is just gonna keep the beating coming, to be honest, with so many cards in hand.
If you're just interested in how many cards, it's all of them. That's all he has.
Yeah.
And he's... right, the Shadoll Fusion, as we've seen again, being tributed away to get it off the field, to put the fusion card, Shadoll Fusion back in Federico's hand, and
at the same time denying Paolo the free Shadoll Fusion, which is a crucial move in the, I don't want to say mirror match here, but when you're going up against a Shadoll deck, with a Shadoll deck.
yeah, and well, there's so many different directions that that Paolo can go from here. You don't want to give him more options by letting him get the Shadoll Fusion from fusing materials from the deck. Okay, here we are. It's Blackluster Soldier.
There we go.
Interestingly, Federico has super polymerization.
Right.
So he can actually answer this Blackluster Soldier.
Right, super polymerization, a card that's made quite a few waves this weekend. Once again, I think we should definitely have a closer look at all the top 8 deck lists and see how many copies the Shadoll decks are running. But my guess is that 2 might be the average number.
Yeah, when you look at it, if Shadoll Fusion is the best card in the deck, Super Polymerization has been the MVP of these matches in deciding who's winning. One card makes the deck work, the other card is actually being the deciding factor in games. It's just so powerful right now.
Yes, the other thing is like, while Shadoll Fusion undoubtedly is a super strong card, you can play around it by tributing your monster.
Yeah, there are options for you to make sure that your opponent doesn't get to get their summons for free. You force them to, if they want to play Shadoll Fusion, commit resources into creating one monster.
How do you stop somebody from using super polymerization against you? I think there's no way, is there?
Well, no, the only way you can play around that is to deny your opponent the attributes that they need to create.
Which some decks simply can't do.
How's the Blackluster Soldier effect being used on Moraltag? Was it not?
Yes, it looks like that, which is
Interesting.
interesting to say the least. Paolo's turn still. He follows up with a tour guide play. But we're still trying to figure out, wasn't there a perfect window of opportunity for the super polymerization?
There is, but now we've got Ghost Brick a la carte being summoned. Now puts a light and a dark on the field. As opposed to before where he had 2 light monsters where he'd have to give up one of his own monsters for a super polymerization. He can now use 2 of his opponent's monsters.
Yeah, but yeah.
Well, no, he's holding it back for as long as possible. Shadoll Falco being destroyed, and then its effect will resummon it, and then Shadoll Fusion being played. This could get this is going to get complicated very very quickly.
Yes, that indeed it does. So there's another El Shadoll construct hitting play, but I'm still not sure. It looked to me like Ghost Trick Alucard was activated, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ghost Trick Alucard was activated. It targeted the Shadoll Falco. Falco, by its own effect, if it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, special summons itself back face down. There is a window of opportunity to stop Falco, because each of its effects, you can only use each one of the effects per turn. And so if it's destroyed a second time, there will be no repercussions for Apollo.
That's probably what he's betting on here.
And we're going to see Shadoll be sent to the graveyard, and more cards coming out for Paolo.
The stream of cards is like never ending for Paolo. So honestly, after this, watching this for the second time this weekend, I really feel like I should be playing 54 cards in my deck.
That's certainly the message you could take away from the duels that we have seen. We'll see how much further in this tournament it takes Paolo. You can see how itchy. Actually, if you look at the body language of Federico, his hand is so close to that super polymerization. He was looking for a window.
Nope. Still. very interesting. So he checks his opponent's graveyard. Obviously, he has quite a few options at this point, thinking about what to do. I'm not sure if I can identify all of them, to be honest.
Not without so much experience with the deck, especially a monstrosity like this deck that Polo's playing, where you've got so many different directions you can go in any given game.
Right, so now it is the time
Now
for
it
the
is.
super polymerization, and once again it might be the deciding factor. Paolo is just like indicating, yeah, whatever, um, just go for it and perform your super polymerization. It doesn't seem to be that like taken off guard by it. So now Federico gets to add El Shadoll construct to his hand, while Paolo is still not running out of cards. He just gets to add a fresh card to his hand.
And Shadoll Fusion,
Of
which
course, a
now
Shadoll
has a fusion monster on Federico's hand. And as you look at Federico, his resources are diminishing, and Polo is just so many cards.
Yep, and like we said, it's never ending, it seems. It's also funny when you see them shuffle, where Federico's deck is getting like, it's actually getting small, where you feel like, oh, shuffling is not taking that long. Whereas Paolo still has quite the pile there. I think he's
It's like, now I'm down to 40.
yeah, no, you get your head start, reducing your deck. I'm gonna get there in like 5 turns. In the meantime, I'm drawing everything I need and make sure that I got all the answers.
Where do we go from here?
So Paolo setting the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, so he's quite protected. He's
Yeah,
in a pretty
he's
good spot right there.
very protected. It answers a Shadoll Fusion monster. And he's holding 2 copies of Graph, Mana Branch, The Burning Abyss, Sir, and Seer, Tour Guide. He's just, yeah, he's got plenty of cards to make that Phoenix Wing Wind Blast so good. Vanity's Emptiness being drawn by, well, Federico. Sorry, the way the cards add up on the app, it's sometimes difficult to tell what's been drawn. But there's a Shadoll Falco, Vanity's Emptiness, Foolish Burial in his hand right now.
So it seems like Paolo is going for a slightly more careful approach, biding his time basically, whereas Federico, I think he has to push, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, he's running out of cards. The longer these exchanges go on, I think ultimately he's going to lose the long game.
So Federico now going for a synchro summon of Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Tree.
That didn't serve Leo very well last round, so
Nope.
we'll see how that plays out here. He's got that Leo backed up with a Vanity's Emptiness for when he's ready. So the Shadoll Fusion counterplay perhaps not going to...
Well, Paolo's got the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, and he is activating it just now, which is interesting because isn't it his only option against Leo?
but the Foolish Burial is putting the dragon in the graveyard, which is forcing the activation of Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. It's either use it or lose it here. And I think Paulo would be happy to put the Shadoll Hedgehog back on top of the deck, just to slow him down. Federico is running on fumes here without the Shadoll Fusion.
Right.
Okay, Shadoll Fusion is a follow-up play.
That certainly seems to be the right call. And since it is free, that card that was just sent to the top of the deck is not going to stay there.
Yeah, it's going to get shuffled away. And actually more options now being added because of Shadoll Hedgehog being sent to the graveyard allows Federico to add another card to his hand.
And Paolo is basically face-palming himself, it seems. He didn't seem to be aware of that line of plays. Yeah, we've had this. Some of you guys said that Federico is outplaying Paolo. So far it didn't appear that way to me.
Well, we're in this situation where Apollo's got so many cards that if he does lose a couple of exchanges, he's not running out of options to counter that.
Right. So Winder is making an appearance on the field. He also gets to search for yet another monster, adding it to his hand. So he's definitely hanging in there, and quite a lot so, much more convincingly than we at first thought.
The Winder is going to be very interesting, especially when you consider the cards in Apollo's hand, actually. Curry Bandit, Sir, Graf, Shadoll Fusion, and Tour Guide. He can only special summon once under the Winder, so a lot of he's only really got one of those options from his deck.
So both players, basically, it seems like they are openly discussing the options because there's so much exchange going on between them, and both of them, of course, being Italian and friendly with each other most of the time.
Yeah, I don't know how well these two know each other or if they play in the...
Chances are they do know each other quite well because
they would have met at least at Nationals or something.
There have been quite a few occasions when we saw both of these duelists in competition at the very same event. So now Federico proceeds with the battle phase. About time, if you ask me. Leo is
it has been a while since plays have happened.
Yeah. So Leo taking down the Exceed monster. Winder is standing back, and that is it.
This is going to be a very strong turn for Federico because he's got Vanity's Emptiness and he's backed up with very, very powerful monsters. So perhaps even though he's down so many cards, because he has the right answers to all of the options available to Apollo, he's in a very strong position despite it looking pretty dark for him not all that long ago.
Yes. So what do you think was the reason for the facepalm of Paolo? Was there something that he overlooked?
Perhaps giving his opponent a free fusion, which allowed Federico to then get back into this. There we go.
Yeah. Well, there's the Vanity's Emptiness. But Paolo still has quite a few cards in hand. He's probably going to be forced into a more defensive position, right?
He's kind of almost forced into Curry Bandit, and you can see he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah. But there it is. And Federico, of course, has no response. So Curry Bandit blows up, and together.
Oh, there you see how Federico acted when the dragon was sent to the graveyard. So that's going to turn off Vanity's Emptiness. And there's a Squamata also going to be triggering.
Right.
And is that Fleece as well?
I'm not
sure. I don't know if he plays that or if
I think he does play that.
No.
No. Well, there was no space.
Oh yeah,
he does.
It is.
He does
so
play
wow,
Fleece.
he's going to get... but of course the Vanity's Emptiness is going to prevent him from special summoning. The deck looks pretty small at this point.
How did that happen?
Considering there's like so many cards in his deck, it's getting there.
I think his graveyard is already larger than the deck, isn't it?
Yeah. Wow.
He seems to be like, oh, this shuffles so easily. All right. So the Vanity's Emptiness gone. And
okay, yeah, so the way the chain was set up.
Right, so Felice is coming back, which is certainly good for Paolo. More field presence, of course.
It just gives him...
And both players, I mean, at this point, it's very understandable that they do have to check the contents of the graveyards because they are, like we said, they are bigger than the decks by now. And one play can make all the difference. If you know that your opponent has access to a card like Blackluster Soldier or not, that is going to be game deciding at this stage.
It's also keeping track of just preventing both players from special summoning more than once per turn.
Yeah, so let's once again take a look. This is the field of Federico, very, very threatening, with Leo, the keeper of the sacred tree, and I think, if I remember correctly, Paolo has no answer to that card, or at least no immediate answer for the time being.
No, it's... If he can resolve a Shadoll fusion, he's got access to a
The
construct, which can take the Leo down.
Yep. In
Oh,
a one-on-one.
but there's a soul charge in Federico's hand, so
Yes.
that's incredible. That's a possibility.
So Federico has one more card in hand, which, yeah, like you just said, the soul charge. This is going to allow for a very big play after whatever Paolo can pull off to come back in that game.
Okay, he's put the window back in his opponent's extra deck with the Falco gets flipped, special summons Dragon, Dragon gets attacked, Dragon activates. So he's opened up his special summon options for next turn, so now he can actually make use of all of these cards he has in his hand. And there's a lot of them.
Yeah. Speaking of lots of cards, his graveyard is quite impressive.
Yeah,
That might already be 40 cards almost.
I think he has to consider, does he have enough options left for a free Shadoll fusion?
Well, the Vanity's Emptiness is gone, and there are no face-down cards on Federico's side of the field.
He's also in a good position where he can now make his plays, then set Vanity's Emptiness so his opponent's comeback plays, including that Soul Charge, don't do anything. So the entire field can be
especially
wiped out
since
here.
it's activation cost for Soul Charge, so the opponent, Federico, might be looking at coming back with a big Soul Charge for like 3,000, and he just like lost 3,000 life points.
Well, he can't summon, and the way the Soul Charge works is you only actually lose life points for the monsters that you do get summoned.
There's no activation cost.
No, and we're likely to see the entire field get turned upside down, and then Vanity's Emptiness putting Federico back. And the way that this whole thing is turned around is now that he can special summon and play the cards in his hand, he can put the combos together necessary to clear these monsters out, whereas before he was being completely shut down by the window, which is just saying, well, you can't play all your cards. So you can have 100 of them, but you're only playing one of them.
Yep.
And not a single one of those are actually going to deal with this.
Which reminds a lot of the Buchin tactics with Kaiser Colosseum. Where it's like, yeah, you can have all the monsters in the world, but you're only going to get to summon one of them.
And does it beat the Bujin Yamato,
Yes.
who's just running around punching everything in the face?
Yeah, he's like that kid at school. Nobody likes.
There's this scene in one of the Matrix movies where there's all the guys in the suits are getting beat up by one guy. I just see Bujin Yamato throwing everything around. I always wondered how it attacks someone with a crane as well. It probably just gets the crane, it's the pole, and starts knocking them back.
Something like that.
I've got a weird imagination sometimes, I'll be honest.
All right, so Paolo is once again beating his head in the most literal sense. He doesn't seem to be too happy with some of the moves he's made. And like he just said, Federico, wow. I didn't see that coming, to be honest.
He picked up his cards.
Yeah, he's just like, no, I can't beat this. I can't deal with Leo, I think.
He seems really mad that he's misplayed there.
Yeah.
And he's banging his head that he's given the game up.
So yes, Federico did in fact outplay Paolo, even though I'm not 100% sure how he did it exactly. It seems like Paolo, even though he had all the cards, he was out of options at this point to
Well,
deal.
what we can't see is in his graveyard. I don't know how many of his... If he went through both his El Shadoll constructs, and then he doesn't have a way of getting rid of the Leo, because there's nothing else in his deck that's non-targeting. Perhaps there was a different line of play that could have been taken, and he missed that, and we've just accepted, okay, I've given up all my options to deal with this, and partly knowing his deck list so well, but visibly displeased and angry at himself that he's allowed that to happen.
Yes. Because, I mean, with so many cards in hand, you are bound to have a couple of options, and he did have options at various stages in that game.
Yeah, and just eventually being locked out for long enough, and then he makes one misstep and goes. Although I'm trying to figure out, it must have been from information that he has, that he knows of what's available to him, because we don't actually have access to all the cards in the graveyard.
Interesting thing though, we saw that Federico, I think he never lost his cool in that first game.
No, you can see even at the point where he was looking very nervous and his hand kept moving towards the super polymerization because he's waiting for that window, waiting for the window, and it paid off big time for him.
Right.
So let's see how they go into game 3, if there's any more side deck changes being made, taking into consideration who will elect to go first or second in this final game.
Now we can see the...
Oh wait, not final games, game 2, sorry.
Yeah, it's just game 2.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here.
We're not quite there yet, but now we can finally see those 54 cards getting shuffled. It's quite a fun view, to be honest, when you compare it to all the small, much smaller decks.
It's just this monster.
Yeah.
You need very big hands to shuffle it properly as well. Well, and I don't want to get into a massive conversation about shuffling because that's something that Robert is so interested in, and I don't understand it.
So, interestingly enough, I mean, when we had Paolo on the stream earlier, yesterday rather, he seemed to be perfectly aware of all of his options and how he can get himself out of a bad situation. I'm not 100% sure if that is, if that was the case in that match. He seemed to be losing track a little bit, and then suddenly, whereas on the other hand, Federico was perfectly aware of what the outs were that Paolo had, and suddenly, well, Federico is taking Paolo to school, and he's like, "This is how it works. You've just lost the duel," and eventually he's like, "Yeah, you're right," and just shuffling up.
He realized he had no way of dealing with the Leo, and it's like, it doesn't matter what I do here, I'm eventually going to lose, as Leo's just going to keep attacking, and I've burned through my options so fast. Leo's an excellent card for your extra deck.
Yeah, certainly. But once again, we gotta give credit to Federico Pastore, who did in fact outplay his opponent right here. I mean, we've never seen anybody shuffle up with what, 6,000 life points, something like that, 5 cards in hand, and just, I want to say, just 2 cards on the opponent's side of the field.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like when you normally look at that situation, at least historically from in this game, it usually means the other person is about to pick up their cards, not here, unless one of those cards is a wave motion cannon sitting on 8 counters. Yeah, that does happen.
All right, so once again, the cards will be coming in just a second. Both players. Paolo is still.
Is he on tilt here?
Yeah, that is the question.
He's still punishing himself for this mistake that he's made.
I mean, he did take a loss yesterday, and after that we featured him on the stream, and it didn't really seem to affect him. He seemed to be super confident. But, well, this is a different day. It's a new day. Well, speaking of new game as well.
Interesting mind control coming in from the side deck, which is very good against Shadoll since they're quite slow when you set them. Taking your opponent Shadoll, Falco, and then flipping it up. You are fighting through the Sinister Shadow games, but very interesting. He's got a couple of good options here.
Yes, he starts things off with a Curry Bandit, and then after setting 3, play advances to the end phase where Curry Bandit is going to send 5 more cards to the graveyard, or 4 more indeed, because one of them gets added to his hand, which is the Mystical Space Typhoon.
I wonder what that says about his hand to the opponent. To take Mystical Space Typhoon over Raigeki Break when you have so many Burning Abyss monsters in your deck, and I think, was that the only 2 options? Mystical Space Typhoon? Yeah, of the other options. Okay.
I don't think so, yes.
Solemn Warning being Mystical Space Typhoon.
So Federico starts with a Shadoll Fusion, not for free, but Solemn Warning, like you said, is gonna deal with that. However, that's pretty costly for Paolo, who's going down to 6,000 life points. And Federico, I mean, mind control, he seemed to be in total control of the game in the first game. So I think he will know exactly when to use that mind control and make sure it does the most damage possible.
Yeah. And we're going to see Sinister Shadow games being used in the end phase of Federico.
So time has just been called in the other remaining matches. We will have a few more minutes, at least 5 I'm not sure if it's 10 to be honest, because we started a little bit later to set up the stream. So, but that is definitely something to keep in mind. And I have a feeling that Paolo was just speeding up just a little bit when he heard that gong that you might have not heard on the stream.
Especially when he's down one game here.
Yeah.
And we saw really nice play of sending the Shadoll Beast to the graveyard, and then Shadoll Falco being able to bring that beast back up.
Right. At the same time, there were two powerhouses going up against each other, Umut Serin and Joshua Schmidt. And we just heard that Joshua Schmidt has overcome Umut Serin and advances to the semi-final. So congratulations. When you see this later, here the game is far from being decided between Federico Pastore and Paolo Pacciana.
Yeah, we're going to see a Shadoll Beast flip summoned. Mystical Space Typhoon taking out Mystical Space Typhoon, Mystical Space Typhoon, Mystical Space Typhoon, Karma Cut. That's always one of the worst exchanges that you can be on the receiving end of hitting your opponent's Mystical Space Typhoon, only have it chained and take out one of your own cards, making their Mystical Space Typhoon so effective.
Yes, but Paolo has cleared the back row of his opponent. That was definitely the goal here, and now he needs to dish out some damage because he's behind in life points, and like we said, the time is going to be called soon.
Yeah, the Solemn Warning definitely taking life points away. Taking away a big chunk of life points to be going into time with.
Right, we have yet another result in from the top 8. Federico Zoppini overcame Carlos Perez, knocking out the last remaining Spanish player in competition.
And that was a Burning Abyss deck that he was playing, wasn't it? So
yes, so now the last Burning Abyss deck is out of the field, and if you want to see a deck win that tournament that is not only Shadolls, well, we do have one or two builds with Shadolls and a few artifact monsters, but if you want to see something that is truly not a Shadoll deck, then you should be rooting for Paolo Pacciana, who is currently a little bit behind. So chances are we might see a total dominance of Shadolls at this tournament.
yeah, if all top 4 slots end up being Shadolls, I'll speak pretty loudly about the 3 decks, which could be considered the best option, or at least it will dictate what side deck cards, how heavily people are going to prepare of the triangle against Shadoll, which then can potentially make the effectiveness in the next tournament for Shadoll less effective.
So the mind control that we mentioned earlier has now come into play for Federico, and Paolo is still kind of shaken, it seems to me, with Federico now not only claiming control, also being able to special summon. Is that a Dark Arm Dragon, right?
No, he doesn't have Dark Arm Dragon. He has a Shadoll Dragon.
That's a Shadoll Dragon.
Shadoll Fusion, Artifact Sanctum in hand.
Oh, okay, so I missed quite a bit right there. Looking at the top 8 that are, or top 4 rather, that are lining up in front of us. We also can give you a heads up. The next match on the stream is going to be Italy's Federico Zoppini against Germany's Joshua Schmidt. So that's a little heads up for now. But once again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Still very much in that match, Federico Pastore, my God, using Mathematician, and now he can search his deck and send something to the graveyard.
And it's going to be a Shadoll Hedgehog.
Right, so what is Federico's train of thought here?
Federico has a compulsory evacuation device which can answer Paolo's Shadoll Fusion. Well, it's Fusion monster, but again, that's if your opponent is playing Shadoll Fusion, they're then going to be able to, if it's a free Shadoll Fusion, they're going to get a construct which is going to allow a huge sequence of plays. He's played the Mind Control to take his opponent's Shadoll Beast, right?
Yes.
That's what's happened. So he doesn't want to give that
Paolo.
back to Polo. It's a bit of a tough situation because Polo will get access to that free
Shadoll Fusion waiting
Shadoll
in his
Fusion.
hand.
Because the Mathematician's been summoned, Federico is not going to have the opportunity to tribute his fusion monster to set Shadoll Beast to deny Polo that that free Shadoll Fusion. So he's got to play his cards very, very carefully here.
But Federico once again being, or seemingly being aware of everything that is going on and every option in this match, seems to come up with something, doesn't he?
Okay, so he's decided to go with...
Oh,
okay, the way he played those Shadoll Beast and Shadoll Dragon, so he's going to get... I can only use Shadoll Beast once per turn.
Right. So he gets to add Shadoll Winder to his side of the field. So we're probably going to see
he's making rank 5 XE, and now Polo is shaking his head there. So it's Volcasaurus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now with the
massive
obvious
damage.
move of taking down that is once again Federico Pastore, the master, identifying all the options that I clearly can't see. It's it's surprising what he can do with that deck. I mean, we've seen it 2 days in action, and still it seems like he's got a whole he's on a whole different level of understanding that deck and mastering it.
Yeah, wow. There's going to be a free Shadoll Fusion coming out from Polo, but that was just rather huge. Just blowing away the Shadoll Beast, getting a lot of damage in.
Right. And we saw the judge putting a die on the table. So that indicates that these guys are now in the timeout procedure, if I'm not mistaken. So there's only so much time remaining for Paolo, and he's far, far behind in this match.
Let's see which rank 3 of choice comes out for Polo.
Yeah, so what does he have really here?
Looking at his deck, he's got access to Dante, Alucard, which can eventually become a Downward Magician, Levia, the Sea Dragon. There isn't actually anything else here, so most
rather limited options here.
Dante?
Dante seems like the safest bet, doesn't it? Can attack over the Magician, definitely.
No, he goes for Alucard because
he's
concerned about his opponent's face-down spells or traps, which we know is a compulsory evacuation device and a Shadoll Fusion.
Yeah. So...
And Shadoll Fusion being destroyed by Alucard.
And Federico doesn't seem to mind that too much. So, yeah, he's waiting for the right moment, and I think that moment has just arrived.
Now that the Alucard did not find its mark, this Shadoll Construct, which is the most likely card of choice for Apollo, is going to be countered by compulsory evacuation device.
And that, of course, is making all the difference. I mean, Paolo, what has he got left with? Look for Paolo, unless, once again, I'm missing an option here.
I don't believe so. I was wondering if there was a Gaia Charger in the extra deck, because he could have went Volcasaurus into Gaia Charger for Federico. I don't believe he plays the Gaia Charger. Otherwise, we'd have saw an extra 2,600 points of damage coming. He does play Michael, the Lightsworn, the Arch Lightsworn in his extra deck.
It's an interesting choice, but maybe he never pushed for game in that way before. And he's like, yeah, this is enough control. I don't need anything else.
And is that Shadoll Hedgehog and Shadoll Falcon being sent to the graveyard?
Right. So, well, Paolo has mastered to put up a field, but that's going to change in just a second, in exactly that very moment when the compulsory deals with his fusion monster. Now he's left with no defense, I think. Well, apart from the monsters on the field.
And just to get some damage, he attacks over the Mathematician, but again, that's making a problem worse because Mathematician just draws a card for Federico.
And Federico draws into his 2 cards. I think there's a Soul Charge among them.
I doubt he's going to use that in this situation.
No, that's not very likely. Volcasaurus taking down another card. That is really, really strong here.
Another 1,800 damage coming in. If only he could make Gaia. Never mind. Where do we go from here? He goes to defense. Right, he's very aware of
The time,
the
of course.
end of match procedure, and
Yes.
he just makes a wall.
We can see both players frequently reaching for the die, very aware of what's going on here. And Federico, he doesn't want to gamble here, and he doesn't have to gamble with a 5,500 life point advantage. 2 monsters on the field, a face down soul charge. It doesn't do anything, to be honest, but
It
well,
scares the opponent.
it scares the opponent, right? And that's probably going to be enough in that situation. So how is Paolo Pacciana? Can he come back from that? No, he can't. He extends the hand. And Federico Pastore, being the master that he is, and friend at the same time, revealing his face-down card, his last option. But
yeah, the soul charge wasn't going to scare
yeah,
anybody.
even then.